Thank you for joining us in Finding God in the World of Video Games. So I have a few questions for you. You, not you. I don't think you'll respond.
Right. Okay.
I mean, we can try. You can play along. Actually, go ahead and play along. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
Question for you: left or right?
Right, I guess.
It's just two options. Okay, right. Up or down?
Down, I guess.
All right. Stomp on their head, jump over them, or shoot them with a fireball.
I mean, I guess it depends on who they are.
I mean, in all of those, they're going to be.
Was this a continuation of something? I kind of have no idea what's happening.
Oh, I guess I could have led with that. By the way, your character just got eaten by a toxic mushroom, and your princess is going to have to continue to live in another castle for the rest of her days because you took too long to decide.
Oh, I didn't even know I was playing.
Yes, well, you lose. Good day, sir.
Oh.
Well, for years, video games have had incredibly simple, almost binary options when it came to choosing how we lived out our virtual adventures. Even games that were hailed as landmark titles for their depth of options were still essentially just a linear progression system that was cleverly buried in a pseudo-open world. I mean, take the original classic Legend of Zelda game, for example.
Sure, we could make rudimentary choices, such as in what order we would like to march through each area and how you would like to spend your currency. But regardless of what choices you made, it was inevitable that you would still have to face Ganon, defeat him, and save the day.
In Mario, he was always commissioned to defeat Bowser and save Peach. There's never a middle ground in which he decided to just, open up a chain of licensed plumbing shops and just submit to Bowser's imperial rule. The status quo of following this predetermined story through its logical conclusion was kind of a pretty standard arrangement. Until a renaissance of choice happened that changed everything. And while it certainly was not the first game to leverage player choice as its chief selling tool, Fable certainly kicked open the doors in a dramatic fashion, and we haven't looked back since. Now, spoilers are going to follow for, a game that is over 16 years old, so hopefully, you're okay with that.
I would hope they don't care. But Fable may seem a bit simplistic compared to the wealth of player options that exist in games such as Mass Effect, Fallout, Elder Scrolls,
Deus Ex,
Cyberpunk, and their kind. But at the time, it promised and mostly delivered a sea of possibilities that few games were able to compete with.
My hero did not have the defined expectations to simply save the day. I could run around. I could just kick my fair share of chickens. Come on, you did it too, so don't play.
You were the person that kicked the chickens.
I kicked every chicken
I didn't even know
so
you
many
could
times.
Chickens.
But the ramifications of my decisions surged far deeper than simply angering townsfolk and giving me some, creative chicken kicking nicknames. Almost every decision that I made either pushed my character farther down the good or the evil path, complete with a constantly changing visual of my hero. They would literally either sprout an angelic halo or maybe some demonic horns based on my in-game choices. But, and this is your final spoiler warning here, the big plot twist to occur in this game was that the final battle was not just a formality of defeating my arch-rival and saving the day. It was actually the final statement on my character's decision to either become the hero that the land of Albion needed or fully embrace the dark side, and I could become the new villainous Jack of Blades.
As we have been talking about moving mountains over the last 4 weeks now, we have looked at their purpose as well as the persistence it can take to move them. But here's the massive plot twist that happens in our real world more often than we realize. Sometimes what we think is a mere mountain is actually something far more sinister. And if we fail to recognize this mountain for what it is, not only is it not going to be moving anywhere anytime soon, but we can get in way over our head in a spiritual battle that we are not fully prepared for.
Much like the majority of a dangerous glacier is actually obscured from view and submerged underwater, the dark and hidden reality of some of these mountains we face is that they are actually demonic, supernatural strongholds that require an entirely different approach than a simple mountain movement prayer. So buckle up, because the waters are about to get pretty deep here. We get our first glimpse at this shadow mountain in the book of Daniel, where we find this faithful servant of the Lord seeking an answer to prayer. Daniel prayed for 3 weeks before receiving his answer, But it's the reason that he had to wait that's the most interesting.
God did not delay his response to Daniel. As a matter of fact, the answer was on its way on the very first day that he was praying. So why did it take 3 weeks to get there? Because there was a battle going on underneath the surface, a supernatural battle with forces Daniel was completely unaware of.
The angel that was sent to Daniel with the answer to his prayer brought some unexpected enlightenment on the nature of how prayers actually work in the spirit realm. We see that in Daniel chapter 10, verses 12 through 24. And I'm just going to kind of breeze through all of this. I would definitely encourage you to read the entire text. But the angel says to him, "Don't fear. The very first day that you set your heart to understand and humble yourself, your words from your prayer, they were heard, and I came because of your words." Now here's where things are going to get a little real. "The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. And Michael, one of the chief princes," that's another angel, "came to help me, for I'd been left alone there with the kings of Persia. I've come to make you understand what's going to happen for your people in the latter days." The vision refers to many days yet to come. So these princes that are referred to in these verses here, these are not human princes. These are angelic, demonic beings. As we see, Michael, who we know as the archangel, is referred to as a prince, as is his opposite number, the prince of Persia. For 3 weeks, Daniel's answer to prayer was blocked as this angel was locked in battle with the demonic leader of the land that Daniel was living in, which was Persia. It took a second angel to turn the tide of this battle long enough for Daniel's answer to prayer to be delivered. But Daniel would not have received his answer to prayer if he didn't play his part in the supernatural, spiritual battle. What was Daniel's role? Let's see what he was up to in the physical realm while this battle was going on in a setting beyond his awareness or comprehension. We see that in Daniel chapter 10, verses 2 through 3. It says, "In those days I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks, 21 days. I ate no pleasant food, no meat or wine came to my mouth. I did not even anoint myself at all," which was basically their equivalent of bathing, "till 3 weeks were fulfilled."
Bet you he was stinky.
I prefer not to think about that.
Daniel was in a state of fasting and prayerful mourning for the same 3 weeks that this angel was fighting to reach him. This was not a passive role for Daniel. He was not only a component of the spiritual battle, but it was his continual fasting and prayer that led to this mountain finally being moved. The obstacle he was battling was far different than he had perceived. He had a spiritual enemy, a demonic ruler of a stronghold who was resisting his efforts to gain victory in his prayers. This was no mere lifeless mountain. The stronghold he was fighting to pull down was an actual adversary.
And then in the New Testament, Paul provides us further clarity in 2 Corinthians 10 on this unseen spiritual war that we are fighting more often than we realize. You see that in 2 Corinthians 10, it's verses 3 through 5. It says, "Though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal," that means physical, "but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into the captivity and obedience of Christ." The word stronghold that's used here in the original Greek is translated as a fortress. This is a military concept, which is appropriate considering we're talking about a spiritual war complete with demonic and angelic warriors who are doing actual battle with each other. Just like in my Fable adventures, what appears to be one thing on the surface was actually a far darker and more sinister opponent than I could have realized. The evil villain in this game, the first Fable, he changed and revealed his true form in the middle of my battle with him. And he was actually trying to gain me as his new host. And if I made the wrong choices along my path, the end fate of my character in this game would be that I would have become him.
And in this example that we see with Daniel, as well as several other instances in scriptures, our battles are not with the physical enemies we may perceive, but the spiritual strongholds that are fighting against us. The mountain may not be a mountain, but a stronghold that we're at war against.
But fortunately, there is a strategy to moving even these dark mountains, as Christ himself demonstrated in Matthew 17, 14 through 21. A multitude had come and knelt down, and they had said, Lord, have mercy on this child. He's an epileptic. He suffers severely. He falls into the fire and often into the water. We brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. So Jesus answered, and he was kind of upset by this. He said, oh, faithless and perverse generation, how long am I going to be with you? How long will I bear with you? Bring the child to me. So Jesus rebuked the demon. This wasn't a healing. There was a demon that was afflicting this poor child, and it came out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples, they came to Jesus privately, of course, they didn't want to be embarrassed, and they said, why couldn't we heal this child? Why couldn't we cast it out? And Jesus said, because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you had faith as a mustard seed, here we go
again.
You will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. Just as we saw with Daniel, prayer combined with fasting was the answer. A dedicated enemy requires an even more dedicated prayer warrior who's ready to do their part to win this spiritual war.
The demonic presence that was plaguing this poor child was not a mountain that could be moved with a quick prayer, not even for Jesus and his disciples. Christ confirmed that in these mountainous battles, these mountains are still designed to be moved. But this goes beyond mere faith and persistence. It requires a disciplined, focused spiritual assault that we fight on our knees.
Now, I'm going to kind of open up here and say perhaps maybe this concept of spiritual battle and spiritual warfare, that might seem a little abstract to consider, maybe even frightening for some people. But like our glacier example that we talked about earlier, what is happening below the surface is far deeper than what we can observe with our eyes. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, we see that we have an adversary, whether we want to believe in him or not, and he is committed to our destruction. The enemy forces against us are highly organized and disciplined. They've been working on their strategies for thousands of years. But they're not to be feared, they are to be fought. Our victory is not just assured, it's already happened. Christ is not at war with Satan. Don't ever mistake that. He has already vanquished that enemy, and he is greater than him in every way. But until the final judgment day, we still fight. Now, perhaps your narrative seems designed to make you fear the evil villain of the story, like we saw in my game of Fable, and to fall under his power until you submit to him. That's what he wanted. But that is not the ending we have to choose. Our enemy may seem scary, with powerful strongholds that we can't imagine defeating, but we have forces fighting for us that are just waiting for your prayers to release them to do their work. Through our dedicated prayer and fasting, these mountains won't just move, they will run. James 4:7. Therefore, submit to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you.